My fiancé's ex invited him to her wedding. Am I overreacting? So here's a situation I never thought I'd find myself in. I, 29F, have been with my fiancé, Matt, 31M, for 3 years, and we're set to get married next year. We've been super happy together, and he's honestly the best partner I've ever had. But recently, something's been bothering me, and I'm not sure if I'm overreacting or if there's actually cause for concern. Matt has an ex-girlfriend, Sarah, 30F, whom he dated for 5 years before we met. They broke up about a year before he and I started dating. From what Matt's told me, their relationship was serious. They lived together, talked about marriage, and even adopted a dog together. But things eventually fell apart, and they went their separate ways. Matt said there were no hard feelings and that they've stayed friendly, though they don't talk often. I didn't think much of it because everyone has a past, right? We've all got exes, and Matt never gave me any reason to feel insecure about Sarah. She's even engaged to someone else now, and from what I know, she's happy. But a few weeks ago, Matt got a wedding invitation from Sarah. Apparently, she invited him and a plus one, me, I guess, to her wedding. He seemed completely unfazed by it, like it was no big deal. When he showed me the invite, he asked, "What do you think? Should we go?" Like it was just another social event. I, on the other hand, felt really weird about it. I didn't say anything right away because I wanted to process how I felt. But the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. I know they broke up years ago, and I know she's moved on, but the idea of going to his ex's wedding felt strange. Why would she even want him there? And why would he want to go? A few days after he got the invite, I brought it up and told him I felt uncomfortable. He asked why, and I tried to explain that it just felt odd to me. I trust him, but I don't really know her. And the thought of sitting at her wedding while she and Matt exchange smiles and reminisce about old times didn't sit right with me. He seemed genuinely surprised that I was upset. He said Sarah was a part of his past, but that's all she is, the past. He reassured me that I was the person he wanted to spend his life with, and that he was only thinking about going because he wanted to support her and be a good friend. "We're not close, but we had a life together once," he said. "I don't see the harm in going." But I do. It's not that I think Matt has any lingering feelings for her. I don't think he does, and I'm not worried about him cheating or anything like that. But it feels like a boundary thing. Why would you want to attend a wedding for someone you once considered spending your life with? Wouldn't that be awkward for both of them? I keep imagining Sarah walking down the aisle and Matt watching her, remembering what they had. I can't help but feel like there's something inherently uncomfortable about the whole situation. I told Matt how I felt, and while he said he understood, he also thinks I'm overreacting. He said that if I don't want to go, we don't have to. But now I'm worried that if I say no, I'll come across as jealous and insecure, which I don't want. It's just confusing. Am I being irrational for not wanting him to go? Should I let this go and just suck it up? Part of me feels like this is an unnecessary complication, and the other part of me feels like I'm setting a healthy boundary. What would you do in my situation? Should I ask him not to go? Or should I trust that it's harmless and support his decision? I don't want to start a fight over this, but I also don't want to ignore my gut feeling. Update. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up like it did. Thank you to everyone who commented, both those who told me I was overreacting and those who validated my feelings. You've given me a lot to think about, and I wanted to provide an update on what's happened since. After reading through the comments, I sat down with Matt for another conversation. This time I really tried to explain why the situation made me uncomfortable. I told him it wasn't about not trusting him, but more about how the idea of him attending an event so closely tied to his past relationship felt like a boundary I wasn't okay with. I was pleasantly surprised by how he handled the conversation. He listened to everything I said and admitted that he hadn't considered my perspective fully before. He said he didn't want me to feel like my feelings weren't valid, or like he was choosing Sarah's friendship over my comfort. He reassured me again that there's no lingering connection between them, but ultimately said, if it's going to cause tension between us, I won't go. We also talked about what Sarah's invite might mean. After some thought, Matt admitted that maybe it was more symbolic than he'd realized. He said they've both moved on, but perhaps she invited him to show that they could truly be friends despite their history. He agreed that, in hindsight, it might be best to let that chapter of his life stay closed. In the end, we decided not to go. He said he'd send a polite message declining the invitation and wishing her the best. I feel a lot better knowing that Matt is prioritizing our relationship over anything else, and I think this experience has actually strengthened our communication. So, no drama, no big fight, Just a healthy conversation that left us feeling more connected. I'm relieved, honestly. The house at the edge of town, a terrifying night we barely survived. I grew up in a small, quiet town where nothing much ever happened. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and gossip spread faster than wildfire. But there was one thing that stood out: a house at the edge of town, tucked away in the dense woods. No one knew who built it, and no one ever saw anyone come or go from it. The house had been abandoned for as long as anyone could remember. It was old, decaying, and there were countless stories about what had happened there. Some said it was cursed. Others said it was haunted. But everyone agreed on one thing: you stayed away from it. That was easier said than done when you're a teenager looking for a thrill. I was 17, and my friends and I had a reputation for being daredevils. We'd already explored the local graveyard at midnight and broken into the abandoned school on a dare. So when someone suggested we spend the night in the old house, none of us could back down. There were 4 of us: me, my best friend Tyler, his girlfriend Jess, and her friend Emily. We packed some snacks, flashlights, and sleeping bags and made our way to the house late one Friday night. It was a chilly fall evening, and the wind seemed to whisper through the trees as we approached the place. The house was even more imposing up close. Its windows were shattered, the wooden porch creaked under our feet, and the front door hung on its hinges. We stepped inside, the musty smell of rot and mildew hitting us immediately. The floorboards groaned with every step, and the house seemed to sigh as if it were alive and aware of our presence. "Come on, it's just an old house," Tyler said, trying to sound brave, but his voice trembled slightly. We set up our sleeping bags in what used to be the living room, next to a crumbling fireplace. The furniture was long gone, but we could see the faded outlines of where pictures had once hung on the walls. The air was cold, unnaturally so, as if the house had sucked out all the warmth. For a while, we just sat around, joking and telling ghost stories, trying to ignore the unease settling over us. But as the night wore on, strange things started happening. It started small. The floor creaked above us as if someone were walking around. Jess laughed nervously and suggested it was just the house settling. But then we heard it again, louder this time. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, as if someone was pacing back and forth upstairs. Maybe an animal got in, Emily suggested, but her voice was shaky. Tyler grabbed a flashlight and motioned for us to follow him. "Let's check it out." We climbed the creaky staircase, our footsteps echoing in the silence. The upstairs hallway was narrow, with doors leading to what must have been bedrooms. The air was even colder here, and a draft blew through the broken windows. We stepped into the first room. It was empty, except for a broken chair in the corner, covered in dust. Nothing unusual. But then the door at the end of the hall slammed shut with a deafening bang. Emily screamed, and we all jumped. Tyler shone his flashlight down the hall, but there was no one there. "Wind?" he muttered, though none of us believed it. We made our way to the door. Tyler reached for the knob, but before he could touch it, the door creaked open on its own. The flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Inside, the room was empty, just like the others. But there was something wrong about it. The air was heavy, oppressive, and a strange smell lingered in the room, like burnt wood and something else, something metallic, like blood. "I don't like this," Jess whispered. "We should go." But before anyone could move, the door slammed shut behind us, trapping us inside. The temperature dropped and our breath fogged in the air. Then we heard it, the faint sound of children laughing. It was distant at first, but it grew louder, closer, until it seemed to come from all around us. The flashlight flickered again, and I could swear I saw something move in the corner of the room. A shadow, but not ours. Tyler was the first to move. He lunged at the door, yanking it open, and we all bolted down the stairs, our footsteps thunderous in the silence. We didn't stop until we were outside, gasping for air, our hearts pounding in our chests. We left everything behind, our sleeping bags, the flashlights, everything. No one said a word as we ran back to town. We never spoke about it again. Not to each other, not to anyone else. But that night haunted us. A few weeks later, I heard that Emily had moved away without telling anyone. Jess and Tyler broke up shortly after that, and I barely saw them around town anymore. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to know if they were still having nightmares, if they were hearing the same whispers I was. Years have passed, but sometimes, late at night, I still hear those footsteps in my head. Slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth, as if something is waiting for me to return. But I never will.